The Strange Life of Leonardo da Vinci. Painters, sculptors, draftsmen, engineers, stage designers, architects, musicians, anatomists, naturalists, physicists, astronomers, cartographers, poets, and each of his works shows the thinking that came before him. Can you guess who it is? That person's name starts with the letter L and ends with the letter I. Yes, but not Lionel Messi or Light Yagami, my friend. That is Leonardo da Vinci. If there was a vote on who is the most beautiful in history, who is the smartest in the world, then controversy would break out. But to say, the greatest creative scientist in history, is Leonardo da Vinci would certainly be the choice of most of us. Throughout recorded history, few people have been able to match his creativity and skill in so many fields. But was Leonardo born a genius? What is his life like? Some details about childhood and young adult life. Leonardo da Vinci was the illegitimate son of Ser Piero, a wealthy notary in Florence. He was raised and educated in secret by a priest and an uncle in a small village near Florence. In normal schools at that time, students were not allowed to write with their left hand and were forced to use their right hand. But because he could not attend school, he was allowed to freely use his left hand, writing from right to left. Leonardo did not have the opportunity to study Latin or Greek, so he could not read the major textbooks of the time written in Latin. He often described himself as «homo sans lettere», a man who was not well educated. Fortunately, thanks to that, he was not influenced and contaminated by contemporary knowledge full of superstition and errors. With the guidance of 2 teachers by his side, he received an alternative form of education and took advantage of it. At the age of 15, he began his apprenticeship at Andrea Verrocchio's famous studio in Florence. Even at this age he was responsible for a number of works for churches and large-scale paintings in bronze and marble. During a collaboration with his teacher, the young Leonardo drew an angel so impressive that the teacher later swore he would never pick up a brush again. Leonardo continued to work at the art workshop until 1477. The first famous painting was made by Leonardo da Vinci in 1973, when he was only 21 years old. This is one of the first landscape paintings that does not appear any religious or human symbols. Given the Renaissance context at that time, the painting demonstrated Leonardo's courage in separating the church from the artistic and scientific aspects of life. Instead, the viewer sees a well-proportioned view of the Arno Valley without any elements being completely distorted. This was a necessary development because maps and landscape paintings at this time were influenced by the perspective of God, and Da Vinci showed that not everything needed to have a relationship with God or the church. Landscape viewers can completely stand in the role of a normal person and redraw it from their own perspective. During his youth, Leonardo continuously encountered economic difficulties. His 10 stepbrothers and 2 stepsisters, Ser Piero's legitimate children, were excluded from the vast fortune they received. In the difficult political context of contemporary Italy, with many small, often contrasting, and often warring city-states, Leonardo had to move from one city to another. In 1492 Leonardo left Florence for the city of Milan. He was given a position serving Ludovico Sforza, Duke of Milan, after writing a cover letter. The content of that letter is as follows. Most illustrious Lord, if you had fully considered the pattern of all those who claim to be skilled makers of war tools, and understood that the invention of the said tools no difference from what is in common use, I will endeavor to present myself to your excellency, show your excellency my secret, and then ask your pleasure and approval to make ye those things will in part be briefly noted below. 1. I have a kind of bridge extremely light and strong, adapted to be most easily carried, and with them you can at any time pursue and flee from your enemies, and other tools that are safe and indestructible by fire and war, and are easy and convenient to install. Also methods of burning and destroying enemy war machines. 2. I know how to draw water out of trenches, and to make countless bridges, covered walkways and ladders, and other machinery connected with such conquests. 3. When besieging a place, if because of the height of the moat or the defensive strength of that place it is impossible to use a bombardment plan, I have a method to destroy each rock and each fortress, even if it is built on a mountain, etc. 4. Again, I have all kinds of mortars, most convenient and easy to carry, and with these I can make a storm of earth and stone, and with the smoke of this caused great terror to the enemy. 5. And if the war takes place at sea, I have the most effective machines for attack and defense, and the ships will withstand attacks from the largest artillery shells. In fact, it was because Leonardo considered himself an outstanding musician that he was given the position he requested. He remained an artist in Milan for 18 years, painting many portraits and decorating palace parties. His passion for complex mechanical mechanisms became more intense. He studied physics, biology and mathematics for a long time, applying his new knowledge to his duties as an engineer. However, Leonardo's interests were so broad that he often left projects unfinished. One of them that cannot be ignored is his anatomical research that can be said to be ahead of his time. Leonardo da Vinci, man of science. When Leonardo da Vinci died, May 2, 1519, his anatomical notes and sketches passed in his will to his loyal friend Melzi, who protected him as his most valuable possession. Me while I was alive, but unfortunately this respect was not transmitted to Melzi's heirs. Many of Leonardo's anatomical studies have wandered from person to person, from country to country, without anyone understanding the true value. We will never know where these works of his have disappeared in the river of time. But from what remains, it is certain that Leonardo began dissecting when he was about 37 years old in the Santa Maria Nova Hospital in Florence, then in Milan where he served the Lords, and then in Rome when he was 61 years old, until Pope Leo X banned it. In total he is said to have dissected more than 30 bodies of men and women of various ages, and also many different species of animals. His anatomical works went far beyond the requirements of artistic anatomy. He paid more attention to internal organs than Vesalius or other contemporary anatomists. What does the artist care about the ventricles of the brain, the structure of the heart, the pathways of nerves and blood vessels? It was his great love for the study of anatomy and physiology that led him to continue working secretly for many years, with poor lighting and many other difficulties, but achieving remarkable results. Amazing! He was the first to describe the uterus as an organ with a chamber, accurately describe the human skeleton, experiment with injecting coagulants into blood vessels, mold the brain, and try to rebuild muscles and organs. Bone joint. However much Leonardo achieved in understanding the human body, his work was destined to have no influence on the development of anatomy and medicine, because it did not widely known until many generations had passed and then only studied through fragmentary records. Leonardo researchers point out that his work in other sciences was as useless as his work in anatomy. During his research life, in addition to dissecting the human body, he also learned a lot about the structure of animals, birds and fish. And despite having studied aeronautics for many years through bird dissection and claiming that flying devices must be built like a bird's body to be able to balance itself and move in the air like a big bird, but his research was not known to subsequent generations, and it was not until 400 years later that the first airplane could take off. Leonardo da Vinci, thinker, inspiration of the era. From the 15th century onwards, European artists aspired to be recognized as intellectuals, on par with writers, mathematicians, philosophers and astrologers. Leonardo was the first to be truly successful, and perhaps the first artist to become famous throughout Europe, eagerly sought after by kings and rulers, living as a philosophical prince with assistants. Manager, his servant. Even if he did not participate in the great works of Renaissance Rome, he did not feel bitter, but instead moved to France to receive a huge pension and lived for a long time. Station. Although he was at times overambitious about the technical possibilities of his time, his works bore no trace of resentment, wounded pride, offended sensibilities, boastfulness, self-righteousness or other manifestations of egoism are often found in writers, artists and other artisans. In the process of searching for the world's truth, goodness and beauty, Leonardo shaped himself through the practice of painting and sculpture, although most of his found works are in an unfinished state. Good. He sought to erase his personal style in his works to reach the ultimate, but ironically in the process of creating a style that aimed to erase the artist's individualistic ego, even though he was trying to make himself invisible, Leonardo created works that became icons of art. Leonardo's universality is not largely due to his education but to the way he shaped himself, embracing the world he approached through the complex artistic culture of the Renaissance. However, his life was not one of asceticism but one of excellent advancement. From the peasants' tables to the rulers' banquet halls, social spirit permeated Renaissance society. To become a perfect court artist, Leonardo had to understand the royal world and skillfully fit himself into its framework. He did such a good job of integrating that he helped Castiglione build the image of the perfect Renaissance courtier. What he achieved by transforming himself into the ideals of his time, Leonardo also did in painting by presenting the sfumato technique. This is a technique for creating soft transitions between colors and tones. For example, in light and shade, nuanced helps the border between two color patches fade naturally. This technique is especially effectively applied to create an atmospheric effect as well as a gentle transition from light to dark skin color. According to art historian Giorgio Vasari, 1511–1574, the sfumato technique appeared in the 15th century primitive Flemish period, found in the paintings of Jan van Eyck and Rogier van der Weyden. During the Renaissance, the famous artist Leonardo da Vinci was the one who clearly defined the concept of sfumato, developed this technique and used it in most paintings, with the pinnacle shown in the Mona Lisa. Of Leo's few masterpieces, the Mona Lisa is perhaps the most famous and most studied. Mona Lisa is more than just a painting. It is a phenomenon, and perhaps Leo's greatest achievement in reinventing Renaissance art. Before the Mona Lisa became legendary, it was just a portrait painting. The model is said to be Lisa Gherardini, wife of Florentine silk merchant Francesco del Gio. It remains unclear why Leonardo accepted a portrait from a member of the urban middle class, while ignoring requests from Isabella d'Este, one of his patrons. The richest art. No official documents confirming that Francesco del Giocondo commissioned the portrait of his wife exist. However, another piece of evidence from around 1506 confirms that at this time Leonardo was working on the portrait, of which he had only begun work. The portrait never reached Giocondo's family. Leo took it with him to Rome and then France. As many scholars have observed, the mysterious Mona Lisa embodies the mutuality of humans and the natural world. Leo explained the human ideology of harmony with nature as he wrote, "Since man is composed of earth, water, air, and fire, his body is like that of the earth. Just as humans have bones to frame their muscles and flesh, the world has rocky mountains to support them. Just as humans carry a pool of blood within their bodies, their lungs rising and falling when they breathe, so the earth's body also has tides that rise and fall every 6 hours. Just as in that pool of blood there are blood vessels originating, ramifications throughout the human body, so too do the oceans fill the Earth's body with endless sources of water." Another special thing Leo included was the pregnant Mona Lisa, which is a metaphorical image of the mother as Mother Nature. Besides his public expressions of the human ideals of his time, Leonardo lived an unusually independent life and successfully protected his private space and independent thinking from external influences. The contrast between Leonardo's private and public life has inspired many artists, from Cindy Sherman to David Bowie, Madonna to Lady Gaga. However, unlike today's celebrities who carry the responsibility of defending justice and putting pressure on those in power, Leonardo did not show a dissident attitude and a rebellious spirit. Since Sigmund Freud's book on Leonardo, in which Freud suggested that Leonardo had unusual sexual behavior, scholars have approached him from a sexual perspective. But unlike Michelangelo, who was inspired by the sexiness of the male body, Leonardo's notes and comments are full of realism, many theories and high scientific content. It is possible that gender desires were the driving force behind Michelangelo's art, but in Leonardo's works they were only minor factors. Like many of his contemporaries, Leonardo da Vinci was a multimedia artist. His life and work extended from the plane of painting to the natural world, which he used to experiment in making machines, digging canals, redirecting rivers, commanding armies, and destroying the stronghold. His idea of using the world as a means of artistic expression has had a lot of influence on art, politics, science and thought of the 20th and 21st centuries. In the 16th century, neuroscience and environmental issues had not yet appeared, but Leonardo's thoughts about the world to this day still contain many values, the most important of which is his understanding that our human consciousness is not separate from nature, but is the nature of nature within humans.